They called my name like it already belonged to someone else. Harold Bennett. I stood up slow, hands flat on the table like I needed something steady to hold on to. The courtroom felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel louder than it should be. Papers shifting, someone clearing their throat, the soft scratch of a pen. I did not have a lawyer. I did not have a plan. Across the room, the district attorney was already on his feet, organized, confident, speaking like this was just another case to move through before lunch. He said my name again, tying it to numbers that did not make sense to me. $52,000 maintenance supplies. Missing inventory. Unauthorized orders. He made it sound clean. Simple. Like all those years I spent working at Cedar Grove Elementary could be reduced to a list of transactions. I kept my eyes on the table. My hands did not move. I was thinking this is how it ends. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet and final. Then I heard the door behind me open. It was not loud. But something shifted. You ever notice that moment when a room changes before anyone says a word? Like people feel something before they understand it. I turned. 3 women walked in like they belonged there. For a second, my mind did not catch up. I just stared. Then I saw the way the one in front carried herself. Calm. Certain. No hesitation. Claire behind her was Megan, eyes already scanning the room, and Lily holding a folder close to her chest like she had something important inside it. I had not called them. I had not told them about the court date or how bad it had gotten, and now they were here. Claire stepped forward before the judge could speak again. Your Honor, she said, steady and clear. I will be representing Mr. Bennett. I turned fully toward her then. She did not look at me right away. She was already moving, setting her bag down, pulling out papers like she had been preparing for this longer than I knew. This was happening. Something in my chest loosened, not gone, but not as tight for the first time in weeks. I felt like maybe this was not over yet. It started with a letter that looked like it belonged to an ordinary day, plain envelope. District return address. Nothing about it felt urgent. I remember standing at the kitchen counter with my coffee still warm, thinking it was probably retirement paperwork or maybe something about insurance. I had been retired a year at that point, still woke up early out of habit. Still checked the weather like I had somewhere to be. I opened the envelope without thinking much about it. I did not sit down until I reached the second page. Civil complaint. I read those words 3 times before they meant anything. Even then, they did not feel real. The paper said I had been ordering maintenance supplies under my name for years. Paint, cleaning chemicals, light fixtures, equipment, and that those materials never made it into the school. They said I kept them, sold them, misused district funds. $52,000. I let out a short laugh. Not because it was funny, because it did not fit anything I knew about my life. I looked around my kitchen. Same table I had for over 20 years. 3 chairs that never matched. An old refrigerator that made more noise than it should. If I had stolen that kind of money, I thought, I must have lost it somewhere. I carried the papers to the table and sat down. There were purchase orders attached. My name printed at the bottom. Dates going back years. Signatures that looked close enough to mine to make me lean in and look harder at first. I questioned myself. 24 years is a long time to do anything. You sign your name enough times, things start to blur. Maybe I signed something I did not remember. Maybe I made mistakes, but the numbers did not feel right. I knew that building better than anyone. I knew how much floor wax we used in a season. I knew how often we replaced light fixtures. I knew how long a gallon of paint lasted when you stretched it the way I always did. Some of those orders were double, triple what we would ever need. I sat there for a long time, flipping through the pages, trying to make it make sense, but the more I read, the clearer it became. This was not a mistake. Someone had used my name, and now the paper was saying that name meant something. I had never been. 2 days after the letter, I got a call from the district office. They asked me to come in. Said it would be easier to talk in person. I drove over in the same old truck I had used for years, parked in the same spot out front. The building looked familiar, but it did not feel the same. Walking in, everything felt more formal, more distant. They led me into a small office where Richard Coleman was waiting, new superintendent. I had only met him a couple of times before I retired. Always well-dressed, always polite in a way that never quite reached his eyes. He stood up, offered his hand, and smiled. Harold, he said. Good to see you again. I nodded and sat down. He offered coffee. I said no. He folded his hands on the desk like we were about to have a friendly conversation. You spent a long time with the district, he said. 24 years. I answered. He nodded slowly like that confirmed something for him. We have been reviewing some records, he said. There are discrepancies tied to your name. I did not raise my voice. I did not take anything. I said. He leaned forward just a little. I am not saying you did anything intentionally, he replied. Sometimes paperwork piles up. People get overwhelmed. Mistakes happen. There was something about the way he said mistakes that made my stomach turn. He slid a document across the desk toward me. If you sign this, he said, we can classify this as a clerical issue. You repay a portion, and we keep this out of court, no charges. No public record. Quiet. I looked at the paper, but did not touch it. What happens if I do not sign? I asked. He leaned back in his chair, still calm. Then it goes to court, he said. And it becomes something bigger than it needs to be bigger, like my whole life had not already been tied up in that building. I pushed my chair back and stood up. I did not take anything, I said again. He gave a small smile, the same one he had when I walked in. I hope for your sake that is true, Harold. I left the paper on his desk and walked out with the feeling that something had already been decided. Without me. After that meeting, things did not fall apart all at once. They shifted quietly. At the grocery store, people I used to talk to every week started keeping their distance. A nod turned into a quick glance. A conversation turned into silence. No one said anything directly. They did not have to. You can feel when people are not sure who you are anymore. One afternoon, I ran into a maintenance guy I had trained years back. Good kid, hard worker. He saw me, gave a short nod, then kept walking like he had somewhere more important to be. I did not stop him. I would not have known what to say anyway. A week later, I got another call. They asked me to come in and return my keys. Just procedure. They said. I drove over again, parked in the same spot, sat there a minute before going inside. The building looked the same from the outside. Same brick, same flag out front. Inside, it felt different, or maybe I just noticed more. I walked down the main hallway one last time. My boots made the same sound they always did. Echoed just a little. Every locker, every classroom door, every corner of that place. I knew it all. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key ring, heavier than most people expect. Years of additions, storage rooms, boiler access, side doors. I set it on the front desk. The woman behind it did not look at me. She opened a drawer, dropped the keys inside, and closed it. Thank you, she said. That was it. No handshake. No words about the years I had been there, just done that night. I sat at my kitchen table with the papers spread out again. I did the math in my head. Lawyer fees, court costs, time. There was no version of it that worked in my favor. I picked up a pen and looked at the settlement form they had given me. If I signed, it would end. I sat there a long time. I am tired, I said out loud, and for the first time, I thought about giving in just to make it stop. Long before anyone called me a defendant, I was just a man trying to get through another winter morning. The first time my life changed, I did not even know. And yet it was January, cold enough that your breath hung in the air and your hands went numb before you finished unlocking a door. I got to Cedar Grove early that day, like I always did, because a pipe near the gym showers had been acting up. The building was dark, quiet. I remember sweeping my flashlight across the gym floor when I heard something. At first, I thought it was the heating system. Then I heard it again, a cry. I walked closer and found a cardboard box near the bleachers. Inside was a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket, face red, hands tight, crying like she had something to say about the world already. There was a note pinned to the blanket. Please take care of her. That was it. No name, no explanation. I stood there for a moment, not sure what to do. I was in my 40s, living alone, still carrying the kind of quiet grief that does not go away. I was not looking to be a father again, but when I picked her up, she stopped crying just enough to rest her face against my coat. That was Claire. A few days turned into a week. A week turned into something more permanent. No one came for her, so I did. Megan came into my life years later. Her mother worked long hours at a bakery nearby. Good woman, always tired. Megan would stay after school most days, sitting outside my supply room with her backpack in her lap. The first time I gave her crackers, she told me she would pay me back. She was 6. I told her she could pay me back by finishing her homework. She thought about it like it was a real deal, then nodded. Not long after that, her mother passed in an accident. No family stepped forward. I already knew what that meant. They told me it would not be easy. I told them nothing worth doing ever was. Megan did not talk much at first, kept her things packed like she expected to leave any day. Then one morning, she finished a full plate of eggs and asked for more. That was her way of staying. Lily was different. I found her in the basement behind the boiler room, curled up with a sweatshirt under her head, too thin for her age, quiet, in a way that did not feel like shyness. I did not move too close, just sat down a few feet away and told her my name. I said I worked there. I offered her soup and a blanket. She watched me like she was deciding something. When the authorities came, They found out her situation was not safe. She was placed somewhere else 4 days later. I got a call, she keeps asking for you. So I said bring her back, 3 girls. 1 paycheck. I was not perfect. I burned dinners. Forgot things. Got tired. There were nights I said I already ate, so they would not worry, but we made it work. Claire studied everything. Megan noticed everything. Lily remembered everything. Years passed. Claire became a lawyer. Megan became a nurse. Lily became a teacher at the same school. I once walked every morning. I never thought of it as anything special. I just showed up, and somehow, that turned into a life that mattered more than I ever expected. I thought I was protecting them by staying quiet. Turns out, they had already started putting the pieces together. It began with Lily. She was still teaching at Cedar Grove, walking the same halls I used to clean. Before sunrise, she noticed things most people would not. A cracked sink that stayed broken for months. A classroom heater that never got replaced. Paint peeling in places that had supposedly been repaired at first. It did not make sense. Then she heard the rumors that I had been the one ordering supplies. That money had gone missing under my name. She did not believe it, so she started paying attention. She took photos on her phone. Small things at first, then more. The same issues showing up again and again with no real repairs behind them. Megan noticed something different. She noticed me, the way I sounded on the phone. The pauses in my voice. The way I brushed off questions too quickly. She had that nurse instinct. The one that listens to what is not being said. When she came by one evening, she saw the papers on my table. I told her it was nothing. She did not argue. She just started watching closer. Claire found out last, but when she did not ask many questions. She went straight to work. She looked up vendor records, public filings, business registrations tied to the district. That was when she found it. A supply company listed on most of the purchase orders. Lake Ridge Supply, LLC, registered not long ago. The name connected to it was not random. It led back to someone tied to Richard Coleman. That was the moment everything shifted. They did not call me right away. They did not confront anyone. They worked quietly, compared dates, cross-checked records, lined up what the paperwork claimed against what was actually in that building, and somewhere along the way, they realized something I had not allowed myself to believe yet. I was not being blamed for a mistake. I was being used to hide something bigger. Back in the courtroom, the district attorney picked up right where he left off. Same steady tone. Same stack of documents over a period of 24 years. He said, Mr. Bennett submitted purchase orders for maintenance supplies that were never properly accounted for. He walked through the numbers like they were facts. No one could question dates. Item descriptions. Totals: paint, cleaning solutions, fixtures $52,000. He said my name over and over, tying it to every line. I kept my hands folded in front of me and focused on breathing steady. Claire did not interrupt. She took notes, calm, focused, no rush. When he finished, the judge looked toward our table. Ms. Bennett, you may proceed. Claire stood, not fast, not slow, just certain, Your Honor. She said, before I begin, I would like to clarify one point. She lifted a single document from her stack. Several of these purchase orders are dated after my client retired from his position with the district. She paused just long enough for it to land. Is that correct? The attorney hesitated for a moment. They bear his name and signature. He replied. Claire did not raise her voice. That was not my question. Is it correct that Mr. Bennett was no longer employed on those dates? A longer pause. This time, yes. He said. Something shifted in the room. It was small, but you could feel it. Claire nodded once, like she had expected that answer. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out something different, a worn spiral notebook. She placed it on the table in front of the judge. My father kept records. She said, not because anyone required it, because that is how he worked. She opened it carefully. Every repair, every supply request, every replacement, all written down by date. She flipped to a page and held it where the judge could see. 12 gallons of floor wax. She read, then she picked up one of the district documents. The official record for that same order shows 30 gallons. The judge leaned forward slightly. Claire placed both documents side by side. This pattern continues, she said, across multiple years. Small differences at first, then larger ones. I stared at the numbers. 30 gallons. We never used that much in a single season. Claire turned another page. 4 light fixtures replaced. She said. She lifted the district record again. The district record shows 18. No emotion in her voice, just facts piece by piece. She was not arguing, she was revealing, and for the first time since this started, the story they told about me did not feel complete anymore. Claire did not rush after that. She let the numbers sit in the room long enough for everyone to feel the weight of them. Then she moved to the next piece. Your Honor, she said, We also reviewed the vendors associated with these purchase orders. She placed a printed document on the table. Lake Ridge Supply, LLC, primary vendor listed on the majority of the orders in question. She paused. Then continued, this company was registered 18 months ago. Another page followed. The registered agent is Thomas Coleman. She looked up briefly. Brother-in-law of the current superintendent. The room went quiet, not the kind of silence that comes from boredom, the kind that comes when something starts to make sense in a way people were not expecting. The district attorney stepped forward. That alone does not establish wrongdoing, he said. Claire did not interrupt. She placed another document. Down payment records, district funds routed to Lake Ridge Supply for materials that, according to on-site conditions, were never installed. Lily leaned forward slightly and slid a photograph across the table. Claire picked it up and held it toward the judge. This image was taken 3 months ago, she said. It showed a classroom wall with paint peeling down to the surface beneath. According to district records, premium paint had been purchased multiple times for this room over the past 2 years. She set the photo down. My father does not use premium paint, she added. He mixes what is left to make it last. A few people shifted in their seats. Claire continued. Another photo, a portable heater in the corner of a classroom, temporary equipment used in place of a central heating unit. According to these purchase orders, she said, that unit had already been replaced. She let that settle before moving on. Megan leaned in from behind me, voice low. If this were a patient, she said, I would say the symptoms do not match the diagnosis. Claire almost smiled, but stayed focused. She tapped the stack of documents lightly. These discrepancies are not isolated, she said. They form a consistent pattern. Inflated orders, unverified installations, funds routed through a recently established vendor connected to district leadership. The attorney opened his mouth again, but this time he did not speak right away, because for the first time the story was not about what I had done. It was about what someone else had been doing, using my name. Claire did not try to overwhelm the room with voices. She chose carefully, just enough to fill in what numbers could not explain. Your Honor, she said, we would like to call a witness. The judge nodded. A woman stood from the second row and walked forward. I recognized her before I remembered her name, Mrs. Carter. She had taught second grade for years before retiring. Not long after I did, she took the oath and sat down, hands folded calmly. Mrs. Carter, Claire began, how long did you work at Cedar Grove Elementary? 23 years, she said. About the same as Mr. Bennett. Did you interact with him during that time? A small smile appeared. Every day, she said. If something broke, you called Harold. Claire nodded. Did you ever see him take supplies from the school for personal use? No, she said without hesitation. If anything, he brought things in. Tools, materials, things the school did not have. That caught me off guard. I had never thought of it that way. Claire continued. Did the condition of the building change in the last few years of your employment? Mrs. Carter's expression shifted. Yes, she said. Things stopped getting fixed. We reported problems. Heating, leaks, fixtures. They would sit for weeks, sometimes months. That was not how it used to be. Thank you, Claire said. The district attorney stood and tried to challenge her statements, but there was not much to question. Her answers stayed the same, steady. Certain. Next, Claire called a parent, a man I remembered helping years back with a broken railing outside his house. He spoke simply, said, I showed up on a Saturday with my tools and fixed it. Did not charge him. The attorney objected. Relevance. Claire kept her voice level, pattern and character. She said. The judge allowed it. It was not dramatic. No raised voices, no long speeches, just a few people telling the truth about what they had seen over time. And that was enough, because a person is not defined by one accusation. They are defined by what they do when no one is keeping score. And for the first time since this started, the room was not just hearing what I was accused of. They were hearing who I had been all along. The courtroom grew quiet again after the last witness stepped down, not tense this time, focused. The judge looked down at her notes, then back up. Mr. Bennett, she said, would you like to make a statement? My chest tightened, not sharp, just there, like something pressing from the inside. I glanced at Claire. She did not speak. She just gave a small nod. I stood up slowly and walked to the front. Every step felt louder than it should have. I turned to face the judge. Then the room, people I knew, people I did not, faces that had been part of my life in small ways, passing in hallways, standing in line at the store, sitting across from me now. I am not a complicated man, I said. My voice came out steady. That surprised me. I worked at that school for a long time, cleaned it, fixed what I could, reported what I could not. I paused for a moment. I did not take anything from it. The words felt simple, but they were all I had. Everything I did, I went on, I did so that those kids could walk into a building that worked. I looked down at my hands, then back up. If you do a job long enough, You should be able to stand behind it. I nodded once. That is all I have to say. I stepped back and returned to my seat. Claire's hand found mine under the table, a quick squeeze. Then she let go. She did not need to say anything. The room stayed quiet, not empty, just listening. For the first time since my name was tied to something I did not do, I felt like I had said enough not to convince anyone, just to tell the truth the only way I knew how. The judge sat still for a moment after I finished speaking, long enough that I could hear the clock on the wall again. Then she removed her glasses and set them down carefully. Based on the evidence presented, she said, "This court finds insufficient grounds to support the complaint against Mr. Bennett." The words did not register right away. They just hung there. Then as she continued, "The case is dismissed." A quiet shift moved through the room, not loud, not sudden, just different. "Furthermore," she said, "the documentation raises serious concerns regarding the integrity of the district's financial records. An independent audit will be ordered." That part landed slower, heavier. I sat there with my hands in my lap, trying to understand what it meant to not be carrying that weight anymore. Claire let out a breath. Beside me, Megan stood up. Behind us, Lily covered her mouth with her hand. The district attorney gathered his papers quickly. No eye contact, no final argument, just done. Near the back of the room, I saw Richard Coleman stand. He adjusted his jacket like nothing had happened. Then he walked out without looking back. That did not feel like a victory. It just felt like something ending. Claire leaned closer to me. "It is done," she said quietly. I nodded, but it took a second for it to feel real. For weeks, I had been sitting with the idea that my life could be reduced to something I did not do, and now, just like that, it was gone. Not erased, but no longer mine to carry. I looked down at my hands again, same hands that had fixed doors, pipes, floors, and lights for years. For the first time since this started, they did not feel like they were holding something broken anymore. Things moved quickly after that, faster than anything I had been part of before. Within a week, Richard Coleman was placed on administrative leave. The district announced an independent audit. Words started showing up in the local paper: misconduct, irregularities, financial review. I did not read much of it. I did not need to. Claire kept track of what mattered. She would call in the evenings and give me the short version. "They are pulling vendor records," she said one night. Another night, she told me the payments to Lake Ridge Supply did not match any real deliveries. A few weeks later, it became clearer the numbers were not small. Hundreds of thousands of dollars routed through that company. Orders approved, payments processed, materials never showing up in the building. The rest followed the way things usually do: investigations, statements, lawyers on both sides. I stayed out of it. I had already had my day in court. What mattered to me was quieter. Like the first time I drove past Cedar Grove Elementary, after everything settled, there were trucks parked outside, new equipment stacked along the side of the building, fresh paint on walls that had been worn for years. I parked across the street and sat there for a while, watched people carry in what looked like new heating units Lily had mentioned that said her classroom finally stayed warm all day. That matters, she had told me. Claire took a position with a legal aid office not long after, said she wanted to help people who did not have someone to stand up for them. Megan kept working at the hospital, same long shifts, same calm voice. When she called to check on me, "You taking your medication?" she would ask. "I am." I would tell her all of it. That seemed to be enough for her. Most days the school board held a small ceremony. A few months later, nothing big. They put my name on a plaque near the gym entrance, Harold Bennett Gymnasium. I read it once, then again, did not say much, because the part that mattered most was not the name on the wall. It was knowing that the place I had spent my life taking care of was finally being taken care of again. The real ending did not happen in the courtroom. It did not happen at the school either. It happened at home. Same small house I had lived in for years, same kitchen table with the 3 chairs that never matched. The only difference, now they were not empty anymore. It started without a plan. One Sunday, Claire showed up with a pie and a stack of papers. She said she needed to look over. Megan came not long after with groceries I did not ask for, but somehow needed. Lily walked in last, still carrying a folder from school, talking about her students. Before she even sat down, we ate, talked a little, sat a lot, the kind of quiet that does not need to be filled. After dinner, we stepped out onto the porch. The air was cooler, the sun low enough to stretch the shadows across the yard. I sat in the old chair by the railing with my coffee. They came out one by one. Claire sat on the step, still reading something on her phone. Megan leaned against the post, watching everything the way she always did. Lily climbed up on the railing, swinging one foot like she used to when she was younger. I looked at them for a long moment. 3 women with their own lives, their own paths. None of them had to come back, but they did. I thought about the early mornings, the long days, the nights when things were tight, and I did not know how it would all work out. and I realized something simple. It had already worked out. They turned out okay. I said. Megan smiled. Lily nudged her shoulder. Claire looked at me like she understood more than I had said. That is enough for me. I added. No one argued with that. We sat there until the light faded. No rush, no need. If you have ever done the hard thing, just because it felt right, then you already know it. Does not always pay off right away. Sometimes it takes years. But when it shows up in ways that matter. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who has been quietly showing up for others. And if you believe that kind of life still matters, stay with us. There are more stories like this.